GBNEWS one last time now with the former editor at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and former special advisor to Boris Johnson, Oscar Reddock. Very warm welcome back to both of you. Dawn, you want to talk about these environmental protests. Anti-oil protesters targeting the car showroom on Park Lane. Yes, in fact, we spoke to Just Stop Oil this morning about it. What are the Times saying?
They are saying pretty much a brilliant interview, by the way. I thought it absolutely nailed it this morning.
He was excellent, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was interesting. But I mean, the thing is, as you've discussed, I mean, they went to Park Lane and they sprayed orange. What is this obsession with orange? Orange paint all over the Aston Martin car showroom, and it's just like it's just rich, spoilt kids with too much time on their hands, aren't they? They're not living in the real world. And it's just, look, I don't eat meat. I haven't eaten meat for years like you, Stephen. I don't even drive. I cycle everywhere. I don't have children. I'm not doing that for them. And it's like, even me, and I'm quite green, they're just making me so angry about they're not helping the cause, are they? I do everything I possibly can to help the cause.
But they are being seen and heard as a result.
And we're having this conversation.
But they're being seen and heard and making you want to punch them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I know, look, violence is not the answer, but you watch people dragging them out of the roads now, and you can't blame them for doing it, and at some point somebody is going to get seriously hurt. And as for what he said to you about not getting in the way of ambulances and emergencies, that was a blatant lie. There have literally been ambulances on film having to turn around to get past the blockades.
But is there a serious point in all of this, Oscar, that people feel that they can't get their voice heard any other way, that the democratic system is too busy navel-gazing? We've got endless what are they calling it, a Tory death cult at the moment, discussions. I mean, the whole of 2022 has been, arguments over who should be leader or who shouldn't be leader.
Well, it's not even
Can
then,
talk
is it?
about that?
It's going back decades and decades. It's very difficult to get heard.
Yeah, I mean, but the same, you can't take an issue that you have with society and then go, to hell with this, I'm going to, basically, let's call it what it is, start vandalising property and, getting in the way of people's lives. I think it's really interesting because you just know, I watched all the clips of these protests recently, you just know that they desperately want, hundreds of members of the public kind of cheering them and as they get handcuffed by the police, they will, yeah, you're amazing, and actually when you watch the public's reaction to them, it's so interesting because it's almost, if they're not being dragged out the street, if you watch the milk ones in the shop the other day, it's just like, can you off, they get none of that. It's absolutely just like complete insanity in terms of trying to get a positive message across for a cause you really care about.
What do you make of Malcolm in Carlisle? Because it's difficult to know. I've made some assumptions, and they are assumptions about the backgrounds of some of these people, right? But let me just say that. Malcolm in Carlisle says, what really angers me is the sense of entitlement these people assume.
And one thing that does annoy me as well, I think that's a very good point there, Malcolm, is the fact that, they are pouring milk over the floor. They were throwing soup, and it was good quality soup, by the way. It wasn't cheap and nasty at the sunflowers painting. And it's like, there are people in this country struggling to buy food and feed their children, and you are throwing it. And as Oscar just said, this is pure vandalism. You can't condone that. These are criminal offences.
It's quite sad in a way. The one slight thing I would say in defence, actually, is that a lot of if you look at the Stop Oil, and they're young. A lot of these people doing this are young, and I would imagine there are people much older who should know a lot better, who are slightly, I don't want to use but slightly leading them astray and slightly brainwashing them and using these young people to do things that they don't really understand the meaning of and the repercussions. And what I would say is, because these young people have obviously got something about them, like they feel like bold and brave enough to go and do all this crazy stuff, like get involved in politics. If you actually want to make a change, become a local councillor.
I'll tell you what
actually affects change. Don't just stand there throwing paint and yelling.
I'll tell you what annoys me in all of this. I'm not saying that we should all have this sort of take everything into our own hands, but if that was happening in my supermarket and I pushed them away from the milk, I'd be done for actual bodily harm.
Well, that's what Margaret's emailed in, and she says it's seriously time to consider moving abroad when you see protesters that are not suffering any consequences to their vandalism, their violent crime rising and expenses.
You do feel slightly oddly proud to be British when you see and it tends to be people who actually have jobs and are trying to get to their place of work when they kind of, and it is quite, it's not too robust, but when they do kind of drag you do feel, I kind of oddly proud. Yeah, a little, it's literally exactly that as well.
Let's talk zero COVID in the Telegraph, should we, Oscar? China said this zero COVID policy, which has been controversial. He says it's got no regrets.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to link it to British politics too much, but I still don't think as a society we have fully almost sat down and really began to take in what COVID has done to us as a society, almost, because it does still feel surreal. I don't think we fully processed it. And we know that the lockdowns that we had in this country, the mental health, the absolute economic aftershocks that we're seeing now is as a result of lockdowns. And it's just absolutely terrifying to think that in a part of the world right now, there are still communities, human beings, who are still absolutely have been locked down since 2020. Over 2 years of, I just find that utterly terrifying. I know it's a really contentious issue, lockdown. Should we have done more? Should we have done less? I think China coming out today saying we have zero regrets over that, I think is, comparatively, we should be really grateful for how COVID was.
It was incredibly draconian. At one point, they were actually literally barricading people into the homes.
It's honestly terrifying.
Yeah.
It's absolutely terrifying.
Well, this is all in the context, wasn't it, of Xi Jinping making his statement at the Communist Party, sort of effectively their political conference, and basically paving the way to say, I've done my 10 years, which is the normal amount of time, but I'm basically going to keep this post until I die.
Very different to us.
A very different situation.
Can't need 10 minutes.
And, just reading in so much about what his plans are and reserving the right to use violence to reclaim Taiwan if they want to. It was quite a scary speech that he made yesterday, I think.
And I think the whole overarching theme here is that COVID, to many people, has been the absolute perfect instrument for that, for his leadership in terms of infiltrating such sinister kind of leadership qualities like that.
He was meant to be a reformer, comparatively speaking.
Comparatively, which brings us nicely back to Jeremy Hunt, who was actually quite a fan of how China did deal with COVID originally.
It is easy though, isn't it, with a crystal, looking back with 2020 hindsight vision, how it was all going to play out. A lot of, nobody knew the best policy, but anyway.
Well. Dawn, is this the actual headline in the song, Winter of Discontent? Or is that, because that's just, no, it is.
That's the shorthand, isn't it? It's the shorthand
if I hear Winter of Discontent one more time.
The actual headline in the Sun is 2 million plot strikes. Disputes could bring Britain to a grinding halt. Well, we're not exactly charging
they are saying a new Winter of Discontent, though, in the piece.
This is the trade union Congress. Their annual meeting is taking place on Wednesday in Brighton, and they are warning that, 1.9 million public service workers are either set to strike or be balloted for industrial action over the next few months, and the union leaders are warning that they are more than happy, by the sounds of it, to bring the country grinding to a standstill.
These people who are complaining that the economy is damaged, it's not performing, it's not getting people what they need, there's not enough money, everything's too expensive, and they want to bring it all to an absolute and utter standstill. This
is the irony of the situation, isn't it? Because, by doing what they're doing, they will potentially lose their members their jobs.
I understand people are so frustrated and have got a lot of problems and financial issues and all the rest, which are very serious. I'm not underestimating it.
Of course.
But it's an act of self-harm.
It is, yeah.
And
we've talked a lot this morning, in particular about the pay-per-views, about unity and the need to move on together and stop fighting like children in a school playground. And this is just not helping. Like you, Stephen, I completely appreciate and I support the right to go on strike. Of course I do. But, what do they want? Everybody in the country, whether private or public sector, to get a inflation-matching pay rise? Yeah. It's just not possible for a start.
And the message it gives out, UK PLC, I flew in, I popped away for my birthday a couple of weekends ago, and we arrived at Gatwick. There were no ground staff, they were all striking, so we were stuck in the plane for an extra couple of hours. Then we got into the airport terminal, the trains were are on strike, so you saw all the tourists arriving completely running around like headless chickens, trying to sort out Ubers or what it was from Gatwick to get into London. It's not a good message.
It's not, and I do think exactly these issues that we're talking about now will dictate the narrative for the next general election, whenever that may be, whether that's in 2 years' time or in 2 months' time. And I really feel like that politicians, government, actually the striking issues is a real problem in terms of how the Labour Party, they're actually really stuck on that issue. But
because they can't turn around and offer inflation-busting pay rises.
Well, exactly, and they also have to saddle up alongside, trade unions and the like. So politically, all the issues we just talked about there are going to be so front and centre of that next general election. Fairness, but what does fairness mean? That means very different. Fairness to some people is like, can we all just muck along, stop striking, we all need to muck in this together. And for other people, fairness is absolutely having that right and absolutely calling for stuff like that. So that's what I think the next general election will centre on.
It's worrying, isn't it? Because you analyse what's going on in the Labour Party. If you look beneath the smooth surface of Keir Starmer,
they got problems too.
Yeah.
just as many divisions.
But let's talk about the Tory problem, shall we? As if we haven't talked about them enough, Oscar. On the front of the Times this morning, whilst the Chancellor and the Prime Minister have been at Chequers coming up with today's plan, there's been a rebellion brewing, whether it's, also so many factors.
So we obviously, you guys have been talking about it all morning. Some really interesting interviews actually with Andrew Pearce. I thought his thoughts were, I think, pretty bang on the money. What I would say is that, and I think just speaking as someone, just to completely detaching myself from politics for a second and just, a member of the public here, whatever the government and the Tory party want to do, make a decision quickly. If you want to stick with the Prime Minister, and believe that, with, Jeremy Hunt's interventions and the absolutely, screeching U-turn, that does create some space, then do it in Vatka. Or, if you're deciding that she can no longer continue, coalesce around a unity candidate quickly.
Such as?
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, that is absolutely a million-dollar question. I think whoever comes next, they have to be as close to a home banker as is possible. It can't be another unknown quantity.
Why won't Ben Wallace step forward? What's stopping him?
I think Ben Wallace is someone who, and this is sometimes levelled as criticism in terms of ambition and moving up the ladder. Ben Wallace is, from what I've always saw, was completely and utterly obsessed with his job in defence. He genuinely loves and values that job. He cherishes that job so much, and he's brilliant at it.
And now they're saying they're going to sort of make cuts to the defence budget, and he said, look, if you do that, I want nothing to do with this.
Why did you say Ben Wallace?
Well, just he seems like a unity candidate.
He was all over the papers yesterday, wasn't he? It's time for Big Ben and all sorts of things.
Who do you think? What do you say?
Well, you let us know. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Who
would like to keep Truss in, I think.
I don't know.
They certainly were big Truss fans for a while. Let us know. I couldn't call it now. I think people are getting fed up with them all. But lots of people talking about Boris. We had loads of views coming in about bring back Boris. You must be joking, Lawrence says. He's caused this whole scenario. Margaret says, I absolutely pray for him to be brought back. Jan and Sidcup says he missed the best chances ever.
With Brexit.
I think the thing with Boris is he likes to back the winning horse, and he can see that this ship is sinking, so he doesn't want to go near it now, does he?
Well, I think Boris Johnson, if you just very, very quickly, I think Boris Johnson, when we look back, actually was dealt and had to deal with some completely unprecedented and horrific challenges. A global pandemic we've not seen like for 100 years, a war in our continent, and I actually think, of course, mistakes were made, but I think our Prime Minister at that period of time actually took us through them pretty well.
Whatever you thought of him at the time, he looks pretty good now.
Stephen, the lettuce looks pretty good at the moment.
Yeah, we're out of time. Just Dawn, in 10 seconds, talk us about this spider.
This is a lady. She's got a thumbnail spider. Her name is Bianca, and she has trained it to give her high fives and jumps. No, she hasn't. That's what spiders do.
Yes, it is. Oh, we've not got the picture of it.
Oh, what do you mean that's what spiders do? Spiders give high fives?
Well, move their legs.
No, I had a pet spider, Isabel. She's got a little thumbnail spider. Mine was a tarantula, Chilean tarantula, and it used to give me a high five when I was about to feed it, and that was the only time it ever did that.
Yeah, well, you're all mad. Dawn,
Thank you, something like that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Thank you.